Welcome back. You're watching The Insight right now. A few minutes to 10 o'clock. And 10 o'clock on the nose, of course, we shall be joined by Dr. Martin Olo. We have Karoli Omondi with us as well, Member of Parliament, Suba South, also the chair of the committee that is the COC in the National Assembly. And also we have Professor with us. This is Professor Gituli Naituli. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us. Right? Some few, of course, days remaining. Then we should be saying a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. It's good to see you, Karoli Omondi, on this other side of the tracks. I was expecting that you will be in the Pini Luo Festival. How did you miss such a, you know?
I'm here today.
You're here today.
And it's my birthday, by the way.
Oh, it's your birthday?
Yes.
Oh, today?
Yes.
You're a December boy.
Yes.
We should be singing happy birthday. Professor, join me. You have a good bass or a soprano.
Yes, you will.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Karoli. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
Oh, now you should have warned me. At least you'd have come with the cake now. You just have to knock back your water. But there's some coffee for you as well.
Thank you.
Right? But thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right. Well, let's just go right into it because of time. We want to be out of here by 11 o'clock on the nose. And we'll just begin with what I teased out, that we should be looking at the National Infrastructure Fund and also the Sovereign Wealth Fund as well. And the issue of Safaricom, the sale of the Safaricom's share, which is in the public domain, and people have been talking a good game about it. But we'll be remiss also if we don't really touch on it. And the president has been very categorical that previously it said that he will be consulting the August House, seeking the August House approval on this ambitious undertaking, that is a National Infrastructure Fund and the Sovereign Wealth Fund. But we've seen that is not what really happened. So on Monday, we had the cabinet, of course, dispatch, and we read all the details inside there. Let's just begin. How did it fly below the radar of the National Assembly? Karoli, good evening.
Thank you very much. Let me begin by saying that the idea of having a National Infrastructure Fund is not a bad idea at all. And it is not Kenya that is developing this idea for the first time. So it's not a bad idea. But let me also observe that as a parliament, we have not discussed it. So as far as I know, there is no National Infrastructure Fund as we speak today. There could just be an intention by the executive or a proposal. And the president and the cabinet are within their rights to make that proposal. But if you look at our constitution, under Article 206, any fund other than the 4 funds that are established by the constitution must be established by an act of parliament. Article 204 establishes the equalization fund. Then we have the county government fund. Then we have the contingency fund, and of course the one which is well known, the consolidated fund. So all other funds are actually subsets of the consolidated fund. So a National Infrastructure Fund will be a subset of the consolidated fund established by an act of parliament. So I believe that the executive will have to bring a bill to the House to establish that fund. The things that cannot be established by an act of parliament will be the subsidiary businesses that particular fund will support. I think Kenyans probably need to understand what an infrastructure fund is. The difference is the way the projects are financed. In other words, what the government is seeking to do is to have a fund that leverages its own resources, then matches with private sector funds to support infrastructure projects by way of equity financing and not loan. They will not be financing them as loans. The government will say, okay, we have X amount that we are willing to put into this project for this particular equity stake. Then the private sector will come along to partner with them. But because this is all within the rubric of the so-called Singaporean dream that we have, let me begin by saying this, that Lee Kuan Yew, whom we are now keen to follow, had a simple mantra. If you want to compete globally, then you must adopt global standards. It is a good thing to pronounce that you want to have an infrastructure fund, but it is a very risky thing to exaggerate the size of that fund. Because what came out of that cabinet meeting is that we are going to have a 5 trillion infrastructure fund. Let me give you some numbers, then you can see why that exaggeration is dangerous. One, Kenya's total debt portfolio is 12 trillion.
Inching up to 13, yeah.
The external debt component, which is forex-based, is just above 5-6 trillion, which is actually equivalent of $38 billion. If you say 5 trillion, that we are going to have an infrastructure fund for 5 trillion, you are talking about $38 billion. $38 billion. Our debt, half of our debt, which is externally, what we call external debt, foreign currency denominated, is just about $42 billion. We are struggling to pay that, and we are saying we are going to establish something at 38 billion. If you look at the National Investment and Infrastructure Fund of India, established in 2015, with the size of the economy of India, is $5 billion. $3 billion by the government of India, $2 billion by other players, non-government players like Temasek of Singapore has also invested in there. If you look at the South African Infrastructure Fund, which is run by DBSA, the bank in South Africa, is 37 billion rand, which is about 8 billion Kenyan shillings. If you look at the other fund, Saudi National Infrastructure Fund, with all the oil, all the dollars they have, is $53 billion. Yeah. If you look at there's also a private one in Africa, Africa Infrastructure Fund, which is focusing on new economy, digital infrastructure, energy transition, mobility and logistics. That one is at $2.5 billion dollars. So to say that Kenya will establish an infrastructure fund
of $38 billion,
other than making a political statement, is entering the market on the wrong footing. In other words, we are not respecting what Lee Kuan Yew said. Because in financial markets, your first line of credibility are the numbers that you present. So it is very important that if the government wants this thing to succeed, then they must bring a proposal that has credible numbers. Any analyst, financial analyst, will just look at the proposal and look at the data very quickly and say this is more of a political statement or a political narrative than a serious financial pitch. So that is the first problem I have with it. But there are other...
So from your assessment, do you think it's maybe for political optics and expediency?
The way it has been presented so far, it will pass like that. But there are even more fundamental questions that we need to ask. You see, the fact that we are establishing a fund doesn't mean we will get funding suddenly from other sources other than what we already have. What will happen, the government will have to get money from its normal revenues into that fund, basically taxes, divestiture incomes, and all those kind of things. So you must ask yourself, where will this money going into the fund come from? Because the one being leveraged by the private sector will come from the private sector. But the government contribution will come from the same resource envelope that we currently have. Then the second fundamental question we need to ask ourselves, the projects that it will finance, because there'll be non-recourse to the National Treasury, the payment will have to come from user fees. So all these infrastructure projects that we want to put up, they will have to be financed by the taxpayer paying the user fees, whether they are toll roads, they are airports, they are railroads, whatever they are. That has to go in tandem with income growth of the population and the performance of the economy. So there are all these fundamental questions we need to ask ourselves. And even more fundamentally, if you want to have an infrastructure fund that you will leverage with the private sector to do new projects, you must create the right investment climate. In other words, the usual political risks and commercial risks that hamper foreign direct investment, you have to address those issues. So you need a real collective of policy and legal interventions to create the right climate. The foreign direct investment Kenya received last year was about $460 million. For that to be leveraged to $38 billion will take about 30, 40 years if we sustain that kind of growth. So these are some of the issues that I think we need to investigate around this fund.
Oh. Yeah, which are very germane, and people are asking, regarding the transparency of it and also accountability. How will the fund be cushioned from state interference? We have, of course, the Auditor General not having any explicit express oversight on this particular fund. Now it's not going through the National Assembly for approval, even the budgetary allocation. These are some of the questions that we need just maybe to answer, first of all. And you say it's a good thing, and you're quoting other jurisdictions that they have this National Infrastructure Fund, and it's been hailed to be a success. Are we starting on a wrong footing altogether, Professor?
Yes, because all the funds, Mheshimiwa has mentioned, they are actually legally established funds. But there is only one country which established the fund similar to the way we are doing it, and that is Malaysia. And our Prime Minister is in jail as we speak.
There is Razak Najib.
Yes, and that's the only country which established following the model that we want to follow. In other ones, outside in government, they are starting a limited liability company.
Yes.
You see, that's why I'm saying also that you can't have under our constitution, under the current constitution, the 2010, you can't have anything in government, outside the government, it won't pass. Someone will just block it. So that fund, all the people here, all the countries he has mentioned,
yes,
they are okay. They are established within their legal frameworks, within the legal system. In other words, Parliament has an oversight role. The Auditor General has an oversight role. Maybe the control on budget, if they have one, has an oversight role. This one is being established outside government structures. You understand? So it will be illegal up in issue. Somebody will just move to court and block it. In fact, if somebody already has a cabinet memo, and because you can now use that, and because I think Mheshimiwa has done it very well, he described it as an intention. But you can still go and block that intention if it's likely to infringe on very specific laws. So I think this government, sometimes it's difficult to understand how it is thinking. I was just reading an act today, which came into force, I think yesterday. It has repealed 19 pieces of legislation establishing in different different parastatals. They are all being repealed. And now you want only that go through Parliament, because you see, this law is clear. You can't privatize. That is amount to basically converting public asset into private, because they are calling them companies. It is forming some kind of company under the Companies Act. I don't know how that is supposed to work under the 2010 Constitution. Okay? So it's the same thing with that infrastructure fund. Either we have a parliament that is actually not there. I think it's like we don't have a parliament at all, because you can't understand how some of these things pass. Like that legislation today, the 2025, is going to something States Cooperation something 2025. How did that pass?
the government-owned enterprise.
I can tell you within the next 2 weeks, it will be suspended in its entirety by the court.
But Karoli, you should have told us. Did you see not any signs, the fingers on the wall, reading
so this infrastructure fund, infrastructure fund falls in the same kind of behavior, where you simply think that you are the state and the state is you.
Let me clarify something.
Right. Before you clarify, maybe just for the benefit of, I think also Dr. Martin Olo is around, so I want just to bring him on set as well. But you mentioned Malaysia, that was formed.
Oh, is it Malaysia?
Yeah. Malaysia,
That prime minister is in jail.
He's in jail. Malaysia, that we had the Malaysia Development Berhad.
Certainly.
Yeah, the state fund, which is a good case in pointing how 700 million shillings was siphoned to the private pockets of the former Prime Minister, that is Najib Razak. 4.5 billion shillings was siphoned from the public kitty into private pockets. And we saw the expenses that was there. Promoting a movie, was it The Wolf of Wall Street? Very, ostentatious jewelry. We saw the yachts.
I mentioned all the good ones. All the good infrastructure fund. It didn't go to that one.
Yes, but we need to note out, as you mentioned, in South Africa, Karoli, I think it was the same template as Kenya. It didn't go through the legal channels of coming through Parliament. It was really off balance. Yes, with the Transcom.
South Africa is not LLC. It's not LLC.
Yeah, it is not LLC.
No.
Yeah, but it didn't go through Parliament, did it?
Actually,
so we saw the ESCOM, the corruption.
The South African Infrastructure Fund is established by a memorandum of understanding.
Yes.
It's not anchored on an act of Parliament. It is by a memorandum of understanding between the National Treasury, Ministry of Public Works, and DBSA, where the Minister for Finance makes an allocation to Development Bank of South Africa to ring fence as an infrastructure fund, which then they use to leverage. And you are right, it is not anchored in law. The one of Saudi Arabia is under a royal decree.
Yeah.
It is in law. The one in India is
in law.
Now, the distinction I wanted to explain, there's a distinction between having a fund and government-owned enterprises. There are many government entities that are in business that are incorporated under the Companies Act. You remember we used to have the old State Corporations Act. A state corporation could be a company registered under the Companies Act in which the government has majority shares. It could be an entity established in the old order, even by an executive gazette notice.
Yes.
It could have been established by an act of Parliament. So if you check Kenya Pipeline and National Oil Corporation are actually established under the Companies Act. Yes, KCB was established under the Central Bank Act. They were not by acts of Parliament.
Yes.
But so there's that distinction. But when you are talking of a fund, if it is a fund can only be established by an act of Parliament under Article 206 of the Constitution of Kenya. There is no shortcut to that. Because if you read that article, it says there shall be a consolidated fund into which all revenues of government, from whatever source, shall be deposited, except those that are deposited in a special fund established by an act of Parliament or appropriation in aid, which are then retained by state organs for purposes of their operation. Those are the only two distinctions.
There's something you people did under Uhuru Kenyatta. You attempted to amend the Constitution through amending the Financial Management Act to allow the government to use money outside the consolidated fund. And I don't know how that thing has not been...
I was not in Parliament then.
Yes. And I don't know how that has not been challenged so far in the court. Because you cannot amend the Constitution through amending an act of Parliament.
You cannot. So my view, Dibal, is that the fund will have to come to us. We are the only people. Parliament is the only entity with the power to establish an infrastructure fund, not the executive.
It really must.
So let me ask you. So did we have things or putting the horse or the cart before the horse?
That's what they have
done. We had, the cabinet dispatch, the cabinet meeting with all this now formation of the NIF and the Sovereign Wealth Fund. Then it will be coming through Parliament. Knowing that Parliament being what it is right now, you act like just a rubber stamp. No, it'll be just, this is perfect. So is that the procedural propriety that this legislation should follow?
You know, Dibal, we are all elected individually to that house, though some of us come in as collectives of political parties. But at the end of the day, it is one man, one woman, one vote. And I think everyone will have to look at this issue independently. So I'll talk about myself, what I will do when the proposal comes. What my first idea is that if you look at our constitution, and I've said this severally, if you want to take Kenya from the first...
But before you even plumb deeper into that, Karoli, I was just asking, what is the ordinary ideal way of actually dealing with it? Does it begin in Parliament as a debate? Then it goes through cabinet?
No.
Or
if you want to establish a fund, the first thing, because it's the executive that should come with the proposal.
Will come with the proposal.
The first thing the executive should do is to undertake a very rigorous study as to what structure and form of fund that they need. And that we need to comply with our national values of public participation, disclosure of information. You know, we have certain values in the Constitution, Article 10, Article 202, Article 232, on both public service, finances, and how we conduct public policy decisions. So that is the beginning. There should be a very rigorous debate, then which should now become a policy adopted by the executive in terms of cabinet decision, brought to Parliament. We pass that policy, then a legislation is then generated out of that policy. That is the correct process.
Position paper.
Yes, that is the correct process.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, so we don't have any faith in Parliament. Let me just rope in Dr. Martin Olo. Good to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Sharp.
I'm glad to be here. I haven't met this guy for a long time. That's why I was very amused when you said that he's actually coming on set.
An old friend of mine.
Oh, he is. Oh, okay. Good to know. Good to know. So you just joined in.
Professor Gitile is always my enemy somewhere in the streets, but we are still good friends. Okay. Yes.
Yes. So of course we are continuing with the discussion on the National Infrastructure Fund and sovereign wealth funds, and we shall also be looking at the Safaricom sale of shares to Vodacom. So I don't know, what is your own assessment? You just came in.
I've heard what my good friend Mheshimiwa Omondi was saying, and again supported by Professor. The basic problem we're having in this country is we are not consistent on anything. If you want to establish a fund, there's a way in which you introduce it as executive. You bring a session of paper, you bring all the argument, you do your research, and then once you have the ideas, you do a policy session of paper, bring it to Parliament. Parliament will discuss it, Parliament will then adopt it, and then you have a session of paper that you can implement. Do not forget that we have Vision 2030 in this country. That Vision 2030 is our policy position. We have bottom-up economic transformation. That is at least this government's manifesto and their policy position. So when you bring in all these things, where are you anchoring them? How do you then demonstrate that what you're doing is coherent, what you're doing is actually adding up, or what we say in policy, in incremental, that you're building up on already what is there, and therefore it's an incrementalism that you're looking for. So my problem with this fund would be, there's a great idea not anchored on what government policy and processes are. Because government policies and processes would then say, if this is going to be, and by the way, once you adopt it, even as Parliament, it becomes a binding policy position for any other government that comes in place. Just like Vision 2030 obligates every other government, because it's our vision, we agreed, we adopted it. Other things like Big Five, those ones we never even anchored them in anything, not in a policy paper or so on. So the point I'm making is that if you are going to make such a strong statement that you want to take us to the first of all, the fund alone cannot take us to the first world. Please, let's be serious. There are more things that we need to do to ourselves. That fund is about infrastructure. We don't have our social services anywhere close to a place where you say we are serious. I'm talking about health. I'm talking about education. I'm talking about employment. There are basic things that we are struggling with. Our problem is not infrastructure alone.
But the fund is meant to be the germinal idea and the germinal seed to take us now to that Singaporean dream.
No,
so we begin from there. Yes, incrementally to go. Just using your word.
When you talk about trickle-down policy and you talk about bottom-up, you are talking about inconsistent things. So basically what I would like to see is, where is that argument? Where is that rationale? How has it been laid out? Who knows what this architecture is about? It's okay to tell us there will be roads from here to there will be this from there to there. What are the backward and forward linkages in this policy position that we are taking?
I think what the Dr. is telling you is that even before you tell us you remove us to Singapore, created the fund, you need to work on our software. And the software is the Singapore leaders. They made a decision that they are not going to enrich themselves, they're going to enrich the country. That was the decision number one. Now, they also made the decision that they will not tolerate misuse of public resources. And so they severely punish corruption. In fact, one of the ministers went to jail for many years as a result of that, okay? And then they made a decision that only meritocracy is going to move you from A to B in government. In other ones, all appointment and the promotions must strictly based on your competence, not the party loyalty, not the tribe where you come from. That is the software. You need to work on the software before you bring in the money issue. The money will come and then go without even building a single road. That's what he's trying to explain. So if you are serious about Singapore, you lay that groundwork first. And then on top of that, you now bring the resources that is supposed to move you forward. Now, we are not doing any of that. We are pronouncing infrastructure, forgetting that we need to build the ground soil of a culture that can now move the infrastructure to be useful for the country. So that is not there. Nobody is thinking about that. That's why Carol Omondi said that was more of a political statement than a serious plan of action. Big difference.
All right.
And if I must say something about Singapore, Dibal, I must say it here. There's no way Kenya can be like Singapore. Singapore is a port city.
Yes.
So the only place that can be like Singapore is Mombasa, a port city, or Lamu. Kenya is a big country with 45 plus million Kenyans. Singapore is how many people? Less than 10 million.
6 million.
6 million. So how do you want us to compare us with a port city? It cannot be possible. Let's not
and the port city is very strategic. From all angles.
Also,
indeed.
If you look at what Singapore did, they established companies outside the country. In the country and outside the country. We are selling ours. So you are selling even the one who you already own, and you are telling us you are going to Singapore. Those fellows have companies in America, which generate money. You know, like you look at China. Do you know there is no income taxation in China? Because the companies, government companies, generate money that now the government uses to fund the social program, like education, like health. We are selling ours. And we are talking about Singapore or Malaysia. I think we need to respect Kenyans and respect those countries, respect those people. Because we are not there. We are too greedy. We can't be there. How can you sell the companies that you have and then at the same time say that you want to be like that fellow who didn't sell, whose rationale for developing the country was actually setting up companies that individuals cannot set up, and then making those companies go international so that they can bring money from outside. This is how Singapore moved, in addition to establishing a culture that was not driven by self-aggrandizement. So we are not in any of that, but we want to be like wishful thinking, like Singapore.
All right.
That is wishful.
So for the ordinary Kenyan, that maybe this may be way flying over their heads regarding to understanding just the permutations around it, that we have all these assets, which are government assets, now they're being offloaded to, a private company.
Without a policy?
Without any policy, without any oversight, without any constitutional safeguards. I mean, we're talking about asset monetization that is taking up to, eye-popping figures. How then do we justify you as a parliamentarian knowing that we have huge assets that is going to people who will not be, even we don't know their faces, first of all, and it will be, we don't know if it will be under the corporate governance. It's not even now the state advisory, is it committee, the SCAC, that will be over, that will actually be, scrutinizing the governance of this particular companies at the end of the day. There is a lot of fog that we need to clear around there. So make us understand.
You see, Dibal, as I've said, any infrastructure fund must be established under Article 206 of the Constitution. That by itself creates a certain amount of governance structure for that particular fund. In fact, the Auditor General, the Controller of Budget, Parliament itself must have a role over that fund. So anybody dreaming that they will create a fund outside Article 206 is lying not just to Kenyans, but to himself or herself. There will be no fund unless you change the Constitution. What they can create without Parliament having a direct role are the subsidiary companies. When you have a fund, the fund can invest as an equity partner where they can establish XY company to offer certain services or to do some infrastructure project and charge user fees. Or it can invest in a third-party company as equity investor. Or they could partner as collaborators. So those subsidiaries will be under Companies Act or whatever they'll want. But the fund where the shilling from the Kenyan taxpayer will be put in as seed money must come to Parliament. And it will have to comply with Article 10, our national values, of equity, inclusivity, Article 232 and Article 201 of the Constitution. And most fundamentally, it will have to comply with OECD rules and principles on infrastructure governance. There are global frameworks. If you want, remember what I said? If you want to compete globally, you must adopt global standards. So there are already OECD frameworks on governance of sovereign funds or infrastructure funds, which you will have to comply with. Some of which are, the projects have to be long-term, there must be least cost financing, not expensive, value for money, public participation, full disclosure of data and information, public participation, all those issues have to be in the governance of those funds. So personally as an MP, I'm waiting for them to bring their proposal to Parliament. Yes, and then I will apply my mind based on what I've said here, on the Constitution, on OECD principles, on best practices from elsewhere, then we can structure the fund. But there will be no fund outside Article 206.
Article 2.
Yeah.
So yes.
Unless we are about again to violate our Constitution, what I'm hearing Mheshimiwa saying, which I agree with, is that we have to be respectful of our constitutional principles. So even when he's talking about the Article 201, the most critical thing is that if you are looking at bringing resources, like even what we are saying about selling, if you are talking about a sovereign fund, for example, you are looking at intergenerational equity. You are building up a mechanism that says that this generation shall also take care of future generations. So as we build this fund is going to be there in perpetuity. If you are saying that, panel it with a lot of policy statements that make sense and talk about sustainability and talk about openness, accountability, and so on. What I'm hearing about this fund is very unfortunate. It's a political animal that we are generating to whip up emotional and political support. That's what it is. So I saw the UDA meeting today and I saw what they were talking about and I was like, these guys, which country are they representing? If it's Kenya, Kenya needs more stability, Kenya needs more certainty, Kenya needs more long-term planning. This fund should fit in everything else that we know. From a governance perspective, from a policy perspective, from a legislative perspective. To just say you are going to create a bill, for example, or you are trying to create a law, this law needs to be anchored in a constitution, in a policy. So where is this policy? What are the drivers here? When you have sold these properties, what are you going to invest this money in? You can't just sell and you tell us, yeah, we sold. Then, no, there's need for us to be taken a little bit more seriously.
It appears to me that the people governing in this country today, they have made a decision to own Kenya as opposed to governing it. Because every decision...
Privatize it.
Yes.
Privatize the
So
state.
there's a difference between governing a country and actually owning it. So every decision, when you try to analyze it, to interrogate it, it looks like it's about to confer private benefit. And what is unfortunate is we have dragged this thing for way too long. Unfortunately for us, even Kibaki protected that method. Because the Kibaki we praise.
Yes.
When Kibaki came in, you would have expected, because he was all into growing the economy, you would have expected that he would have dealt with those IPP contracts signed during Moyera. Because they are completely unconscionable. So you would have expected Kibaki would have, he didn't, he protected them. So Uhuru came protected them. And this one is also protecting a bad system. So it's like the elite has made a decision in this country that to own the country as opposed to governing it for posterity. Because if you look at all this decision being made, it's very hard to understand whether the people around the president or the president himself, surely, before a government speaks, and that's how government get trusted. Before they speak, the pronouncement is solid, its integrity cannot be impunged, it cannot be challenged. But it look like here that we just say whatever we need to say, and then if people come and put holes or Mutata comes and get it thrown out, the following days, those acts, the cyber, whatever act which came, in fact, anything that is challenged, the court ends up agreeing with you because of the law. You see, this constitution we have is like also the government simply doesn't want to follow it. And if it doesn't want to follow, that means that the policies that they pronounce cannot have their intended objectives. Government is about thoroughness. Government is about full consultation, so that whatever policy now comes as a result of that long process is already owned by the citizens. They own it. So what we have from 2013 is a government, can you describe it? It's a government on the go, basically.
Right.
The depth that you expect.
We are sort of really back to where we were before with the British East African Company.
Yeah.
Carol, if I may just use that as well. But I wanted just to ask that, because you've mentioned a very critical issue. We're talking about sale of asset liquidation. There won't be any asset sweating because now everything will be liquidated. These are major projects, turnkey projects that we're talking about. And when you're talking about infrastructure, I mean, it takes long years for you to get the return of investment. So how then will you be funding up this sovereign wealth, kitty, knowing that, yes, you want it for the intergenerational equities, but we have a struggle here, even raising enough funds to, feed Kenyans. Right now, we're struggling with hunger. 2.1 million Kenyans are dying of hunger. Are we having priorities which are sort of misguided? with this infrastructure? It's a good, of course, salutary effort coming from government. But is it the right time to have this particular fund?
You see, as I said, I'm not objecting to having a national infrastructure fund. It's a good idea, but be modest about it. You don't talk about 5 trillion, $38 billion.
But modesty aside, is it providentially right to have it right now?
And then you remember, I also said, remember these funds, they'll be financed from our normal resources because there's no, we cannot sell all the parastatals. Yeah, we cannot. And all these parastatals have been declaring dividends, taking to the treasury, and we are still having budgetary deficits and imbalances. So there's no new pot. The fact that you've announced that you have an infrastructure fund, that suddenly you have another line of money coming from nowhere. So it is still the same pot. And that's why I started by saying, by exaggerating the amount, apart from losing credibility, it also shows we are not serious about it. And let me tell you something now as a transactional lawyer. The final document before any transaction is declared effective is called a legal opinion. That legal opinion will look at our partner, the Kenya Infrastructure Fund. Is it established in compliance with their law? A lawyer will look at Article 206 and say, hey, we don't see an act of parliament for this fund. It is not established by law. There will never be any transaction. That is just the way it works. That is how it works. If we don't anchor it on law and we don't become very innovative and modest about it, it will not work because we don't have resources to put into it. What is happening? There's 244 billion, this thing from Safaricom, estimated to come from Safaricom.
Yes.
And government knows very well, if it goes to support normal budgetary expenditure, like the Uhuru Eurobonds, there'll be an uproar. So that money has to be warehoused somewhere. Yeah? That is why there's a rush to establish this fund. That money has to be warehoused somewhere. You get the point? Then there's also the proposal to extend the railway to Western Kenya. You clearly understand the Chinese have said we will finance, I think up to 30%. The others have to come from other partners and internal resources. These are the two factors
that are driving this particular flash of interest.
Yes.
This.
So,
just before you continue, a rational being. What would you do with Safaricom? Would you not allow the streams, the money that come from dividends, to go into that fund? Would you sell the shares when there is a constant flow of dividends? What would you do
of profit?
If you are rational? Would you sell or would you get the dividends?
You see,
fund the infrastructure?
It will depend. The economists will tell you, economists, and I'm not one, they always say on this hand, on the other hand. On the one hand, you are assured of your 18 billion every year from Safaricom, exactly. So you can plan with that. But on the other hand, getting 244 billion upfront to start probably 3-5 other lines of business will probably generate 35 billion.
Why did they say, why they offer Kenyans to buy
the problem with the transaction of Safaricom is that there's no study that was done that informed the choice of divestiture. Again, that is a breach of our Article 232 of the Constitution. The Treasury should have first done a study and looked at the various options. One is further flotation through the Nairobi Stock Exchange.
But we are paying 1.2 billion shillings to some advisors. How come there was no...
Those are transaction advisors.
Transaction advisors, okay.
Those are transaction advisors to invest, to help with the sale.
Yes.
The first step that the national... Because the Treasury is the custodian of government wealth. Treasury should have come with a study, articulated it, brought it to Parliament, because we have a privatization committee of the National Assembly, placed it there and explained that we have looked at further divestiture of our shares, the pros and cons of it, holding the shares, divesting now, and the method of divestiture. And they should have looked at 3-4 different methods. Yes, one which would have been like for me, I would have said part of that should be floated at the Nairobi Stock Exchange. Because remember, in this country, we have a principle of inclusivity and equity in our constitution. Only 1% of Kenyans own 78% of all financial assets of the Republic. So we should have dealt with that inequality by floating some shares, additional shares at the Nairobi Securities Exchange. Secondly, we should have opened the remainder to competition by local and foreign institutional investors who could buy large blocks. Yeah, in one go, 2%, 3%, 1%. Excellent. Yes, that is what we should have done. But a study, I'm not saying it is the best method, but those are things that we should have considered, and a study should have told us whether my proposal or this one of selling directly to Vodafone, yeah, would yield the maximum returns and the maximum social benefits for Kenya. Because sometimes it's not just about the cash, it's also about social issues. Yes. It's not just about the cash.
Okay. And I want to agree with
Listening to you, so brilliant. So how come these things are being done and you people, you know, if you move the court,
Prof.
your argument right now,
Prof.
do you know the block here?
Wait, Prof. This is a member of parliament. He's articulating his views. He also has,
but he's doing it so brilliantly.
Yeah, but he has an opportunity to still say so in parliament, which is the right place. But I was going to say this, and just to support what Mheshimiwa is saying. Let me play up something. Mheshimiwa here is not just any other lawyer. He's been even in the AG's office. He's worked there as a counsel. So he's been doing opinions for the government before. And something he's saying which is very important. If you are looking to foreign investors, the issue of due diligence is critical. That you are going to invest in what fund? What is the structure of that fund? What is the legal basis of that fund? How well anchored is the fund? If you can't answer those basic things that Mheshimiwa is saying, what you are dealing with, even though he's talking about economics being a left and right, is what they once talked about voodoo economics. Voodoo. That you want to tell us that once you have this 5 trillion, you will all of a sudden do a bragadabra and you will create magic. No, economics does not work like that. There's a systematic way in which you approach economics. It is a systems-based, institutional-based, and it's also a theory-based. So if you want to tell us that you can actually, and by the way, I don't believe it, that you need to move this country from I don't know where by infrastructure, there is more to it than just infrastructure. Yes, infrastructure is important, but what is it supporting? What are the linkages and what are the backward and forward linkages? Those are critical. If you're going to do a road in Northeastern, that's not a problem. The question is, what else are you doing to generate economy there in order for that road to be economically productive? Those are the things you need to do. And to do that, it means that you have a whole policy thinking. You've looked at everything that's possible, even when you're looking at livestock, looking at agriculture. The other day I was listening to the president and he was talking about the dams. And you know, I laughed. I said, yeah, it's okay, do the dams. But where are you looking at? What are you interested in? Yes, power generation. But if you really are talking about dams and you're looking at this country, why not talk about how you target Northeastern? Because there is arid land and there is sunshine and crops can actually grow there in a matter of weeks, not months, weeks. 3 months or say 12 weeks or even 20 weeks, you have a crop mature and is selling. And then you have livestock that you can feed from the byproducts and so on.
Right.
In other words, this country...
Which brings a very critical question. I can see also we have a few minutes just remaining. You've raised the northeastern part of this. Yeah, we just started, yes, but we have to finish at 11 o'clock. Yeah. We're northeastern, and this is where maybe Karoli will help us, also in the National Assembly, because we are talking about, of course, the prosperity of this nation. Water has been scarce in the country. Even right now, we're talking about drought. If this eye-popping figure of 5 points, trillion shillings that we are, trillion dollars, shillings, that we are seeking.
$38 billion.
Yeah, $38 billion. We've always been talking about how expensive it is to make potable water from saline water that we have. Down there, the water table in Nakuru can feed this country for the next 75 years, experts have said. Why can't we concentrate on making sure that this saline water, is becoming potable water that we can irrigate the entire of northern region and feed the country.
Or just run of water, surface water. I mean, there's so much.
That run of water also will give us the electricity that you're trying actually to, accrue from all this mega infrastructures that you're actually putting up.
If you listen to Majimo, he actually answered that question. When he was explaining to you the steps that could have been taken.
But we're looking at practical issues.
Of the shares of Safaricom. That is what responsible people do. The steps that you have described is what responsible people do. That is what we are lacking. We are lacking that responsible leadership. That's why we are not utilizing those resources we are talking about. So our priorities are completely wrong. I mean, look at the parliament passing in billions for State House, and then you can ask yourself whether State House is building bridges and building roads.
No. Prof, let's get it right. Parliament is, by law, by this constitution, Parliament is responsible for actually resource allocation. Look at how much they go to State House to ask.
Yes, but that's what we are asking.
What are you asking?
So what are they doing? Because they are supposed to interrogate those figures.
Let me update you on something.
Yes.
Dr. Martin here, we worked together in the office of the Prime Minister. He was part of our strategy team. You remember Professor Hino?
Yes, Hino.
We had Professor Hiroyuki Hino. That's a guy who discovered Goldenberg in this country, by the way, while he was working at IMF. So we brought him in as Prime Minister's economic advisor in the Grand Coalition. And with the Japanese, one of the studies they did was how to give Turkana people water. They discovered Turkana has so much water that can be translocated all the way to Wajir. In fact, part of the oil people think is oil in Turkana is actually water.
Exactly water.
It is so much, and it is clean and fresh. Yes, underground water. Yes.
Clean and fresh, potable.
Yes, potable water.
So what kind of water is potable?
We did the Japanese.
What about saline water?
But they've always told us this is saline water. It's not.
No. The Japanese
really?
did that. Fresh water, clean, fresh water. Anyway.
So what is the problem? Why can't we use that potable water?
Let me tell you what the problem is. The problem in this country has been something called state capture. You remember we are talking about Safaricom here. And I've said this over and over again. When Safaricom was started, the elites of the time who gave the license to Vodafone or Vodacom, what did they do? Apart from being paid what was called a finder's fee, they had shares warehoused for them on what is called free carry basis in a company called Mobitelea.
The Mobitelea.
Yes? Do you remember professors talked about IPPs that were not discontinued by Kibaki? Do you know why they were not discontinued? The first IPP was Ibra Africa, which was generating power somewhere, we call Mbakazi, but near the junction of Donholm there.
Yes.
Yes? The sponsor was Union Fenosa of Spain. But curiously, the pension fund of KPLC invested, plus other people. Now, how do you create an arm's length relationship between the buyer of the power and the producer? Who is left to protect the public interest when the employees of Kenya Power and their leadership are shareholders in the IPP? They can't negotiate the most competitive tariff for the consumers. And that was the reason why that diesel plant kept on burning and burning, even when we had enough power from hydro and the rest. These are the problems we have in this country. State capture, where business decisions are made by bureaucrats who, instead of looking after the public interest, they are looking at their personal interest.
Right.
Benefiting from
it's the same template that we had when you're talking about state capture, just like we had with ESCOM in South Africa, and was it Transcom also in South Africa?
Yes.
With this sort of funding that we are talking about, this is how the state capture was rising in South Africa, and we saw what really happened. Blackouts that we've been talking about, ESCOM in South Africa, is akin to what we had with the power rationing during Kibaki's regime.
2009, 2001, when I was at then it was called Electricity Regulatory Board, we traveled to South Africa. South Africa had 10,000 megawatts of excess power.
Excess power.
And by that time, they were supplying the entire South African power pool, which included Namibia, Angola, and the other countries around it. And we wanted to do a transmission line up to Nairobi. Because from South Africa, so that we create a major, African power pool. Yeah. Today, they're rationing power.
Yeah.
South Africa.
Because of state capture.
That's how bad.
Because of state capture. Because Zuma and ANC, forgot. In South Africa, the problem with South Africa, which you also see in our neighboring country here, Tanzania and Angola, are these so-called freedom parties.
Yes.
They are confused. They don't know where the party ends, where the government begins. They don't know. So in South Africa, if you want to be a CEO of ESCOM, you have to go through ANC. It's not that you have gone and done an interview. No, the ANC Central Management Committee has to approve you to be the CEO of ESCOM. Now, when you have a political party run by the likes of Malema, people who have never run a business, who are just good at making noise and shouting, whom do you think they'll choose to run ESCOM?
All right. Okay, let me come to Martin, because time is ticking away from us. I fail to understand how this sale of Safaricom, the shares, the ownership from government, can be going to private hands, and yet we have classified some of the assets as critical infrastructure. If a country is saying this is a critical infrastructure, what are the safeguards for a critical infrastructure? Can that be, handed over to private equity?
And there's no problem, Dibal, if they are handed over to private equity. The question is, what is the rationale and what is the return? I mean, governments are not into business, but governments go into business for reasons, and governments also divest from business for reasons. Which are these? And that's why we are going back to our Article 10 of the Constitution and saying, be open about it, be transparent about it. Go back to our public finance, Article 201, and tell people what it is that they are gaining and what it is that they are, the benefits and the merits and the demerits. Explain. Once you have explained it, Kenyans will be wise enough to either support you or question you, but still tell you, since you have the mandate, deliver it on it. Safaricom is a working entity. And there's something that Mheshimiwa said earlier. If it is giving you a certain base for every year, chances are that it can give you a compounded amount now, which you can then actually use to even compound the figure. So if you're making that argument, show it, show the figures, show the returns. And he said, the problem is, and Professor Gitilo was saying, the problem we are dealing with in this regime is that we have privatized the state. We have privatized the country. We are running the country like a corporation. Governments don't run like corporations. Government have other responsibilities other than making money or even talking about losses. When you talk about losses and you're in public sector and you're in service delivery and you're into service, health, education and so on, those things don't add up. Sometimes you put money where your mouth is, even when the return is long term. And that's what education does, that's what health does. Even infrastructure is a long-term issue. The question is, what is your logic? What is your policy proposition? And how are you articulating it to others? So for me, I like to see the articulation. And so, yes, the money will be sold, and we'll be back here wondering what happened to that money. Yeah?
Right. I want to agree with you, Ndubaro, that there is such thing as critical infrastructure. There is infrastructure with what is called national security implication.
Yes.
You can't put Kenya Pipeline on private hands because somebody can decide to simply run as Ndura and block the mafuta somewhere and the whole country stands. That person, you can't put, even in Safaricom, there are those government institutions with the national security implications, which cannot be sold for any money. They are there, they exist. Kenya Pipeline, Safaricom, and all that. The problem we're having here is that the people now managing these assets, they are not able to make those distinctions. And trust me, somebody can go on Safaricom and argue on a national security issue and win a court case.
Yes, we're looking at the legal minefields here. If we are classifying critical infrastructure, and I'm wondering why, Dr. Martin Olo is saying there's nothing low.
I don't share that view that Safaricom is critical, in the sense that this is an investment that the government has made in a telecom. Now, are you telling me that by divesting in it, government loses in any way? Maybe not. Why? Because Safaricom is still available even from a private dealings with the government as well. So that it does not mean that government must invest in it for the benefit of it. So, but the point really is that it is okay for government to sell or to divest. I don't think that you can.
Safaricom
which is okay. Yeah. But do we have certain companies or certain firms that we can deem them critical, as Safaricom, as the Kenya Pipeline, that it can actually gum the system of a government? We know what amount of transaction goes through M-Pesa.
You know what
amount?
Yes. Yeah. But what we were saying earlier, a government that's functioning should not. If a government is functioning, we should not be worried whether KPC will be sold and therefore will be at risk. No. The question is, how strategic are we being? He said earlier, it's about the fear we have is state capture, and it's real. The people who want to buy KPC are not your business people. They're not people who are coming to do a good deal out here. The people who are coming, he talked about the power in South Africa that was excess, and now it's not excess. Why? It's now they're
rationing the power.
Rationing. The point is, are we really interested in the country, or are we interested in individuals benefiting? Where individuals are benefiting, the country is the loser, because the country is bigger than individuals.
Thank you.
And the needs of a country are...
Right. Karoli, then we give you our closing remarks.
Yes, I want to leave Kenyans with a simple comparison. Our SGR, Mombasa, Nairobi, and the SGR, Katrina, Rabat, Casablanca, Marrakesh in Morocco. Our SGR cost us $5 billion. That is what we paid for it.
Which is not electrical.
Yes, and we're seeking...
It is diesel, it is not electric.
We were seeking $1 billion to electrify it.
The one in Morocco, which cost $5 billion, 430 kilometers, has French technology by Alstom, Spanish technology by CAF, and South Korean technology by Hyundai Rotem. It is a high-speed train that travels at 350 kilometers an hour. So Kenyans should know what state capture is doing to them.
Exactly.
Just by comparing those two projects.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Your closing remarks, Professor Getila Ituli?
Yeah, I would say that also Kenyans need to add the cost of the standard engaging from which is Tanzanians are broadening to Uganda. The cost of the Uganda pipeline to Tanga, the cost of the Ethiopian airport, which is supposed to handle 1 million passengers per year, all that is about 3.1 trillion. We have borrowed 3.5 trillion in 3 years. We are not funding the project of that magnitude.
Right.
That is Karoli's example of state capture.
All right, Dr. Martin Lo.
We are in this together. I mean, we are part of this country. And what we are saying is that this country cannot be privatized and the benefits go to individuals rather than to the citizens. So what we should be pushing for is that the government has to be accountable. And it's not about whether you like the government or not. The very reason why anyone wants a government is so that it can deliver services affordably. Not houses affordably, which you pay for. No, deliver services affordably. And then people can make the money, they can buy their own houses, they can do other things.
Thank you.
You cannot pretend to be doing things for people.
Right, thank you. Dr. Martin Lo. Associate Dean, School of Law, DStv University, thank you for coming through. Also, we want to thank you, Karoli Omondi, Member of Parliament,
Thank you.
South. Thank you for coming through. Professor Gitela Naituli, asante sana kwa kuja. We really appreciate Professor Leadership and Management, Multimedia University. What a trenchant, insightful discussion we've had. I wish we had more time, right? So we can always be picking up these pieces next year.
Bring him some more.
Yes.
We need
Very insightful.
public
Yeah,
space.
you've got some.
I was in mourning, that's why I didn't come.
Yeah, I know. You had told me 40
I
days.
needed to finish 40 days of mourning, Baba.
Yes. So we cross over to next year, but I want to thank you so much for graciously consenting to be here. I really do appreciate. Right.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for your valued
Congratulations
company.
for the good work you're doing.
Asante.
Baba.
Shukuru. Right. And thank you for, of course, your valued company as well. May you sleep serenely. Have a good night.